All right. All right, good evening, everyone. This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors, at the Education Service Center, and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WIBD, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. I'd ask our superintendent to confirm that this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A special thank you to the school board members for assembling for this special board meeting tonight. We have one item on the agenda to discuss. I would ask for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
All right.
Second, Nancy.
Thank you, Paul, and Nancy for the second. Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We're on to the public participation portion of our agenda. Are there any individuals who wish to address the board for public participation? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the next item on our agenda. It's the only action item we have. An update regarding the Families First Coronavirus Response Act expiration plan. And Mr. Lenny Hansen is going to walk us through that. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I want to echo thanks to everybody for joining us. This has been a very uncertain topic. I'll try to summarize it as best I can for you. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act was passed back in the spring as a response when the pandemic began. It was accompanied by the CARES Act at that time, which were some additional expenditures by the federal government to protect businesses and individuals during the pandemic. What we're here to talk about is an item related to employee leave due to pandemic-related reasons. So part of these laws, or really part of the FFCRA, was creating some additional absence banks and reasons for FMLA and paid sick leave if anyone was absent for a pandemic-related reason or COVID-related reason. So it's not just that someone might have the virus, but they could be quarantining because of exposure to the virus. It could have been related to caring for someone in their home who has the virus, or it could have been related to a childcare disruption caused by the virus. So there are a variety of reasons. In board docs I kind of laid out, there's actually 6 reasons in there. There's really 2 primary components that applied to the school district in this realm. One was called Emergency Paid Sick Leave, or EPSL. That was an additional bank of 10 paid days for any employee who might be affected by one of those 6 reasons. This was really revolutionary in terms of paid leave, because in the past, the government has never mandated the expenditure of funds by a business or school district or government entity for leave. The government has provided job protection through the FMLA laws, but never the actual requirement that you pay for it. Now, we, like thousands of businesses and districts, have paid leave options for employees that they're able to take advantage of, but that's really separate from FMLA protection. So this additional emergency paid sick leave was really revolutionary, and what it did is created a safety net of about 2 weeks if someone was going to be missing work, that they wouldn't have an interruption in their compensation during that time. The second element referred to as extended FMLA. What eFMLA did was create an additional FMLA reason as well as pay. So this was specific to childcare disruptions, childcare or school disruption that caused you to miss work. And what it allowed is for you to receive an additional 10 weeks on top of those first 2, an additional 10 weeks of pay at 2/3 your normal pay. If your say your child's child care center closed because of exposure to virus or whatnot, or your child's school closed because of excessive virus exposure on site, that's a separate item. Those two items were part of the FFCRA, which was due to expire, or is due to expire, this December 31st. When the law was first put in place, it said, well, we'll see where we are on December 31st, and the federal government planned on then addressing what to do after that if the pandemic was still taking place. As we all know, the pandemic is still taking place in full force in our community and around the world, but the FFCRA is still set to expire. We have been watching very closely for a number of weeks as the federal government and Congress and with the presidency has been debating an extension of different elements of the CARES Act and the FFCRA. As late as last night and early this morning, we had believed that the new legislation that had been put forth, and I think as we speak is passing both houses of Congress and heading over to the president's desk for signature, would include an extension of these two provisions. We had been advised by professional organizations and statewide advocacy groups that for weeks and weeks that this is going to be extended. And then a couple of weeks ago, when it appeared that talks were falling through with Congress, all of a sudden it was, oh my goodness, it's going to fall through. You're talking about thousands of businesses that affect roughly half of American employees in this country. We're going to have to come up with their own custom practices around this. Well, we were excited when they said they were now making progress late last week on a bill and thought this would resolve it. As you know, the text of that bill was not public at all because it was being negotiated into the weekend with its passage still in question. The text is still filtering out, and I don't know how many, if it was 2,000 pages or whatnot, being reviewed by attorneys and whatnot throughout the country and legislators. What we're being advised is that it does not appear to provide an extension of these pieces, that though these extensions of these employee leave options did not make it into the bill, which was expected to happen if we did get a bill. So this was surprising to us to learn this morning as we conversed with statewide organizations as well as our own attorney who's advising numerous districts on this. Therefore, we all know that the pandemic is not suddenly going to disappear on December 31st, and we are going to continue to experience employee absences, employee quarantines, and whatnot on January 1st and beyond. And we need to determine what the best practice is moving forward for both the protection of employees as well as the fiscal responsibly way to manage our funds as a school district. So I'm really bringing forth two different proposals around that at this time. The first revolves around that emergency paid sick leave, which again provides that 2 weeks, so 10 paid days of time that an employee can utilize if they're impacted by the virus. That bank of days has impacted different employee groups in different ways. And that has been largely dependent on if you're in a position in our district that allows you to work from home or not. We have some positions in our district that working from home is very realistic, very doable, and very effective. We have other positions just not possible. So to put that in perspective, our teaching staff, our certified staff, have largely been able to work from home, and it's worked, I would say, better than most people would imagine, where we put someone else in the classroom, an aide or something, someone like that, who is supervising the order of the classroom, and then we have the teacher projected onto either a screen or onto each individual Chromebook, providing instruction from home. Which is, the actual classroom teacher for that class providing instruction is obviously superior to bringing in a substitute who's unfamiliar with the students and whatnot. So that's actually worked out very well. We've been very pleased with that considering the situation. Well, that's meant that very few of our teaching staff, our certified staff members, have had to use up their emergency paid sick leave. A great deal of them, roughly 40%, have used at least some of the time, but only about less than 1% have utilized that entire 10-day bank. So of our certified staff, almost everyone still has some days remaining in that bank. Support staff is another story. These are employees such as school nutrition, custodial, aides, as well as some clerical positions. Some of those positions can work from home, but not many. Roughly around 15%, maybe slightly under, have been able to work from home. The remainder have not been able to and had to dip into that bank of days. And that has caused a great discrepancy in what percentage of people have used their time. We have already 10% of the support staff have used their entire EPSL bank, and they are out, okay? And it's going to continue to happen. Our support staff is going to continue to be heavily impacted by this. As you well know, many of those individuals, especially the aides, food service, and custodial employees are some of our lowest paid employees, certainly have less financial stability in their life than maybe some of our other employee groups. Many of them are not full-time as well. So an interruption to their, to their paycheck is obviously even more impactful. It'd be impactful for anyone, obviously, but even more impactful. Therefore, we are recommending that for the remainder of this school year, we continue to offer the 10-day EPSL bank for all employees. While, as I explained, you have certain employee groups more impacted than others, it's really legally questionable and not best practice to pick certain groups that keep it and certain that don't. It's best to have a standard practice across your system. And therefore, we are recommending that we continue that. We know these employees are going to continue to be impacted by this. And we also know that some of those employees who work less than 20 hours in our district don't have paid illness time. So whereas many of our more full-time staff can fall back on paid illness time if they were to use up their 10 days, some of these most financially vulnerable employees don't have that option because our district does not have paid illness time if you work less than 20 hours, which again is a lot of these employees in these support staff groups. So that's the first piece of our recommendation. The second piece is around that extended FMLA. This is the component that allowed 2/3 pay for up to 10 additional weeks if you had a child care specific disruption. This has not been used extensively at all. Was it less than 1%, or what was it? Was it 1%? Yeah, it was less than 1% have had to use this child care 2/3 pay extended FMLA option. It hasn't been something that's had to be used a lot. The 10-day EPSL bank has sufficed, and that's been obviously a positive. It means fewer people missing work for us. We do feel it's very important to maintain the job protection piece of extended FMLA so that if someone does have to miss work because of their child care or school being closed, that they have security that their position will be held. But we're recommending that we not extend that 2/3 pay component of it. We don't feel it's necessary. We also feel that that is what we're seeing other school districts in the area also go with. Basically, really focusing on that 10-day bank, which targets all of those reasons, and this child care piece just ensuring that the job protection is there. Obviously, there's a lot more uncertainty when someone has to use that child care reason. I mean, you could miss up to 12 weeks altogether. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Employees are being proactive and saying, okay, if I end up in a situation like that, what's my backup plan? This 10-week piece, again, was passed back in, March, April, and at that time there was so much unknown around the virus. People didn't know, was my child going to be closed for a year, for 6 months? Now that they've seen that these interruptions are very brief, it hasn't ended up being as much of a needed financial protection. So I put a lot of information there, lots of details. So I want to answer questions about that, help you understand kind of how we came to our conclusion. We did some financial analysis, not some, quite a bit of financial analysis around this. The reality is, because a lot of our employees do have sick time, the expenditure to a large degree on paying employees while they're not at work for a COVID-related reason, the expenditure is going to take place either way. The matter is, are they going to be using their illness time or other leave options, or are they going to be using their EPSL bank? But those individuals who are most vulnerable are our part-time staff or support staff who maybe don't have as large of a bank of those days because they don't have the tenure. And like I said, many of them have no illness bank. So a large part of this is about protecting some of those most vulnerable staff. And Mr. Sarno's here as well. I mean, we can talk about other financial elements in that as well. Superintendent Wimmer?
Yep, if I may. I think the important thing is that we have made a commitment to our community to keep our doors open, and we have done that successfully. And it's because we are not coming in when we're ill, we're not creating transmission within the schools. We have done amazing work. We want to make sure that we have the same protections in place to keep our doors open in the second semester that we do in the first. And having this time built in is something that was part of how successful we have been. So I think that that's really critical. We're not, just so the community understands, we're not asking to add 10 days to everyone and restart a clock. We're just extending what was already here that has made us successful and giving our employees that assurance about the job protection. So that kind of in summary is the why behind what we're doing.
What I would hate for, especially some of our support staff employees, for a position for them to find themselves in is saying, I might have been a close contact at this, this outside, event or whatnot. Do I have to pick between receiving no compensation or showing up to work if I might have been a close contact? Now, our employees have been phenomenal at abiding by the rules and abiding by all of our practices. I don't want to create any situation where people who are financially challenged during this very difficult economic time to make some of those decisions that are going to be based in not always best health practice. And again, our employees have done a great job, but I don't want to put some of these employees, especially part-time people, some of the people lower on our wage scale, in that very difficult position.
And two, I think the other piece, community perspective-wise to understand, is that we have received federal dollars and assistance to do what we're doing, and we're able to offset different costs in those pieces as well to support keeping our kids in school.
There is some information in board docs for you that the CARES Act, which was a lot more financial handouts to private sector, public sector, whatnot, as part of the response by the federal government. The district received over $400,000 as part of that CARES Act, which can be used for a variety of pandemic-related options. If you wanted to know more information about that, Mr. Sarno is able to speak to that. But the cost of all the expenditures we've had on any paid leave because of the virus, it's far less than the amount that we've received from the CARES Act. Here, come on. That's not on. You can come over here. As a part of the CARES Act, $498,000 that the district was awarded this spring as a part of the first stimulus package. The district's able to capture, because some of that money does go to the private schools that we allocate out. It does flow through the district. There's $430,000 that is available. We built these expenses, much like hand sanitizer, the virtual platform, some of these other expenditures that we anticipated. We did build that into this year's budget in anticipation that we'd be incurring some of these expenses. So where I think we probably could have doubled or tripled that expenditure, we're doing what we need to do. We're making sure that we're being fiscally responsible, but yet at the same time there are monies available for this anticipated expenditure through the proposal's term, which is the fiscal year end in June. Any questions on that at all? Okay, thank you. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this. I know it's kind of a complex, multifaceted issue.
Questions?
Just to restate a comment the superintendent made, the EPSL component is simply an extension of, we're not resetting the clock, we don't get another 10 days, it's just extending what at the moment expires on December 31st.
Correct. We're not resetting the bank or anything like that. If you haven't used it yet, your days continue. If you've used part of it, your bank continues, but we're not refilling those banks.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I just have a comment. Another great day in the West Bend School District because we're open. And really want to commend the staff, the teachers, the administrators, the superintendent for keeping us open. And it seems like a common sense principle. Why wouldn't we continue the practices that kept us open? So thank you for sharing the information, and I'm in favor of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on Kurt's comment for a moment that I've had, numerous conversations in the community and people say, oh man, I can't imagine the stress that the board is under dealing with all of this. And quite honestly, I personally don't feel it. I'm very thankful for Superintendent Wimmer, our administration, our teachers, our support staff, and our families in the community for doing the right thing, for making the right call, for having the vision to lead us through. We look at some districts in the area. I see what's happening up in Oshkosh right now, and I'm thankful that West Bend is off the front page. We're doing great things, and knock on wood, I pray that we continue to not have to close buildings. Our job as a board is to set policy like this and then let you all do your job. So I take pride in enabling you all to do what you do, and like Kurt, I will support this.
And just to reiterate, if the law changes, let's say in January or changes in February, I think you had mentioned this before, but the proposal is, of course, the law would supersede what we do here, but in absence of any other extension, what we are deciding here today would be policy.
This would be policy through the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, unless the government takes action. I would say the odds are better than 50% that, that there will be government action on this. I think right now we're in a very unusual lame duck session of Congress and things like that. And once, new Congress is seated and things like that, I think we may see them taking up this again. And there's been a lot of hinting at that as well, so.
Sure. Well, what I appreciate is administration kind of taking the bull by the horns here, because we could have sat by and waited to see what happens, which may happen, may not happen, might happen in January, might happen in February. But I appreciate this because this communicates to our employees what our policy is going to be and makes it clear, especially in advance of January 1 when this would expire. So thank you for that. Any other questions? All right, well, I'd like to take up these issues separately. So I will move to approve the extension of emergency paid sick leave job protections and paid leave options pertaining to COVID-19 related reasons provided by the paid sick leave provisions of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act to eligible employees through the end of the 2020-2021 fiscal year as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, we'll give that one to Joel. Thank you, Joel.
Yes.
Motion and second. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I will also move to approve the extension of job protections, but not the 2/3 paid leave offering provided by the paid expanded FMLA provision of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act to eligible employees through the end of the 2020-2021 fiscal year as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Tani. Second on the motion. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate presenting this topic to us. We have reached the end of our planned agenda. Are there any other items to come before this board? Hearing none, I would move to adjourn.
Second. I've already got one, so I'm out.
We'll give that one to Joel also. All right. Motion and second to adjourn. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries and we stand adjourned. Thank you again, everyone, for coming to the special board meeting. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everyone. Take care.